than any other group I think I've been in front of. The exchanges back and forth, even just the sidebar chatter is helping, and it's great. And I don't have a set stump speech, you know, it's whatever my heart moves me to say on a given night, but I do have common points that I bring up. One is an optimistic outlook for our future, and I'll get into why that's the case. Two, that it's driven by an understanding of our system, who we are as a country, who we are as a people, our political framework, the fact that we're a representative of the public, we have an opportunity to come into rooms just like this, and we don't have thugs outside the door getting ready to drag you off to some gulag someplace, like you see in a lot of other world, right? If we didn't have the ability to affect change in our system, there is no point in us being in this room tonight. We could just take the Little League game, or we could have some of that great artichoke dip, which I got to get the recipe for. If you all believe that things have to happen, that they have to change, and there is some mechanism to do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be engaged, right? And there are groups just like this, meeting all over the country. You know, some of the guys who would have been here tonight couldn't be because they're in other locations. You know, they're up in Amherst, they're over in Durant, or they're up in Rock County, or you name it. So there are groups just like this, and people are fed up with the way things have been going in D.C. They want their voice heard. They're motivated enough to come here on a given weeknight, taking time out of their own personal schedules to be involved in a room like this. I mean, you could be in the movie theater or something like that. But you're here for a reason. And that is encouraging. This is a good thing. And we're going to see some dynamic change across our country this season. Because everybody is of similar mind, and you hear it all the time in all previous election cycles, it's the most important election time of our life. And it's just not the case. This time around, it is the case. We are faced with enormous debt, out of control spending, an intrusive government that just doesn't know when to say stop and get involved in the most intimate aspects of our lives. We've been tracking the news, we're not talking about having unmanned UAVs in our own skies, possibly aren't. I mean, who the heck does the federal government think they are, that they can treat us like some third world country? So we're familiar with the problems, and that's why I don't spend a lot of time getting into them. If you had a question of me, how I think about deficit spending or debt or socialized medicine through Obamacare, anything like that, I like the question and answer period best because I can find out what's on your heart. For some people, are we going to stand with Israel is the most important question they've got. Somebody else might think it's pro-life. Somebody else might want to know what my position is on guns. I don't know what your particular issue is, but I'll be happy to address that here in just a moment or two. But what I'd like to tell you, since I've met some of you, a lot of you I haven't, is just a little bit about my background. Dixie and I have been married for 21 years. We've got 3 great kids. Well, mostly 3. My oldest, Aubrey here, she's there with me this evening. She's 17, Liam's 14, and Emma's 12. It's promised her she wouldn't have to say anything tonight. That's why she came along. We got a dog, 2 cats, and a guinea pig. You guys know a little bit. Anyway, I'm from Claremore, Oklahoma. My family moved to the area in 1978. I'm from St. Louis. We came down with a bunch of folks about every year for several years before that to the big Tulsa Soul Winning Workshop. And that's how we got to know that neck of the woods and just fell in love with it. And so we moved to the area. Went to Sequoia High School just north of Claremore. When I graduated, I went to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. And I was driven, even at that age, by a love for my country and to do whatever I could to pay back the country that gave me the opportunities that we enjoy. And that's what motivated me when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. I still remember my mom waking me up on a morning telling me the Desert One fiasco there in Iran, when we had the hostages and all that. I mean, it was that plugged in at that time. I wanted to be a U.S. Marine because it was the toughest challenge I could think of, and it was the best way I could to give back to my country. I managed to get a nomination to the Naval Academy. When I graduated in 1985, I took my commission in the Marine Corps. My dad asked me, please don't be an infantryman, but let's see how that worked out. 20 years in the Marines. During that 24-year period in uniform, maintained Oklahoma residency, Oklahoma taxes, Oklahoma voting record, absentee ballot. Even while I was traveling to over 30 countries, serving our great land. And the experience that I had from the young buck second lieutenant running trucking operations in some distant theater to a senior lieutenant colonel being part of the planning staff for major operations involving hundreds of thousands of people. In Kuwait, I was one of the guys that stood up for capabilities in Kuwait for the invasion of Iraq in 2003. I was also part of the core planning team at U.S. Central Command headquarters that did our operations been stationed at the Pentagon when 9/11 occurred, so being able to see that through the completion was pretty nice. But in all that time, what that told me was how great our country is. It's just who we are. Everywhere from Congo and the west coast of Africa all the way over to Japan for a year and a half. I've been in the Balkans, I've been in the Middle East, I've been in much of Europe, and the Mediterranean, North Africa, you name it, I've been there. And you see autocratic authoritarian regimes, you see terrorists running around, you see people who are scraping by on dirt and dirty water to live on. And as bad as we think we have it today with our debt, it's a problem. Intrusive government, it's a problem. It doesn't hold a candle to the rate the rest of the world operates. And that's why I'm so optimistic, all right? People get down in the mouth and somehow or other our country is going to disappear in 18 months or 2 years. Okay, so it's one thing I will say in front of every group. Do we believe so little in the greatness of our country that we think the American experiment is going to go away? Do we really believe that? Do you think Russia is going to dominate the 21st century? Authoritarian regimes in China? Islamists and suicide bombers out of the Middle East? Do you think Guatemala is going to eat our lunch? I mean, come on, folks. You know, this is a great land, and it's worth fighting for, and that's what I've been doing my entire adult life for the last 30 years. All right? At the end of my career, I was working at the senior levels of the Department of Defense, and worked down on the Marine Corps, other service chiefs, worked for a couple secretaries of defense. When we got to that 20-year mark, we thought stability for the family would be pretty nice. Had 17 addresses and a whole bit. Decided to go ahead and cash in my chips in the Marine Corps, and was hired in by a couple of companies. One provided a big contract with the Department of Homeland Security. Myself and 2 other guys put together a biosurveillance program covering 300 million people, taking the data from all over the world to provide early warning of any kind of biological threat that might threaten our country. It was just rewarding work, and I was just proud to work across the broad expanse of our government with every agency that might be involved in that nationally and internationally. And then I was brought into another organization in the last 5 years where I was a senior fellow who supported, again, the Department of Defense. I supported the Office of the Vice President, National Security Council, National Intelligence Community, federal law enforcement, my testimony to Congress. On such an array of issues, it's kind of hard to capture that in about 2 minutes of talking. But I'll be answering questions on that. My biography gets in some of the material. The point is, it's not about ships and tanks and airplanes in the defense community. When you're talking national security, it has to do who we are as a people. What is the viability of our economic system? Are we producing jobs and learning individuals? Do we have hard skills, from a small engineer, mechanic to a trade craft, like welders? Are we producing mathematicians and engineers? Is our country going to be able to compete effectively in a globalized environment? Do we have independent access to energy? When we talk about energy independence, I've been involved in that. Do we control our own borders? Do we know who's in our country? That's a big issue, folks, right? But we have the means and the wherewithal to solve these challenges and to know who we are. We do not want to be Americans. We want to be Americans based on our Constitution and our great faith and belief in the divine underpinnings of our country. Those are the issues that I've dealt with, and I've been very influential. In addition to the bio program, when you stand up against your own service, you love the Marine Corps, right? Once a Marine, always a Marine. The Marine Corps has been investing for 20 years in a particular weapons platform that's going to be the future of the service. General Dynamics was the prime contractor for it, the largest defense contractor in the world. $14 billion program. The technology just simply wasn't there. Compromises had been made in construction. It was going to get Marines killed and fielded, and they were right at the point of developing prototypes and testing those things. I was the guy writing papers arguing against it. And my work was influential in convincing the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Navy, and members of Congress to cancel the program, returning $14 billion to the taxpayer, I believe saving lives. Folks, that's 2.5 times Oklahoma State budget. So I've been affected at the national level. I've traveled all over the world. I've worked with the Israelis, I've worked with the Brits and the Australians, I've worked with the Japanese and South Koreans. I know we've got great friends and allies around there, but they all look to the United States for leadership. We can't lead abroad if we can't lead at home. So the importance of I've preached too long. It's a little bit about my background, where I've been, what my focus has been, working as an American. And when you're in uniform, it doesn't matter who controls the White House or Congress, you're doing what you can for the long-term good of the country. When I left the service, I I made sure I was in companies that were independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit, the second firm there, so that we could do independent things, advising and trying to help inform decisions made by anyone so that the right decisions are made, again, for the long-term good of the country. I've dealt in 15, 20, 25-year scenario worlds. Where do we want to be at a quarter century from now? What does the rest of the world look like a quarter century from now? And so I've been able to sidestep the short-term solutions, the easy answers that everybody is looking for. If somebody tells you you're going to solve the national debt in 24 months, they're lying to you. We got deep, deep problems. There are long-term solutions that are required. And you're going to need somebody who understands that and has shown a willingness and an effectiveness to beat that drum and carry the fight and be successful at the senior levels of our government. It is a completely different ballgame from Washington, D.C., working with the world and a nation of 300 million